Thank you all for joining tonight's presentation, Birdability, a panel discussion. We're glad to see so many Audubon leaders and supporters here. We're going to get started very soon. We're just letting everyone join. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all for joining. Appreciate you taking your time out. And welcome to Birdability Week 2020. It's part of Disability Awareness Month. We're so thrilled to have you all join us. It's going to be an excellent panel discussion this evening. And as Virginia Rose likes to say, a celebration that birding is for everyone. I'm Heather Stark. I'm our VP of Grassroots Capacity Building at National Audubon Society. And tonight you're going to be hearing from an excellent panel of birders who are going to be discussing access considerations and their own experience of birding with disabilities. Our presenters are going to be ready to start discussing a lot of different exciting things with you tonight, just after a couple of brief housekeeping announcements. All of our attendees are going to be muted throughout the webinar, so you can contact us, ask questions through the chat. So please do so throughout, and we are going to have a great question and answer at the end of the discussion. We also want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded. So we want to make sure that lots and lots of people will be able to listen and join in with this later. I also just want to warn you that everything in the chat box will be able to be seen later. So just take that under consideration. We will be able to share this out later in lots of different ways, the recording. So it will be on audubon.org /birdability. We will be emailing it to everyone that has registered for this webinar, and you'll also be able to find it on our Facebook page. So now it's my pleasure to introduce one of my good friends, Joe Watts, who is the Vice President of Programs for Alabama Audubon. He's also on our National Audubon Board of Directors. Joe has done quite a bit in the state of Alabama to help people enjoy nature. He's been involved in writing legislation for Alabama's Scenic Byways program. He's done quite a lot of statewide tourism projects there. One of my favorite things he does is to help the next generation. He's working a lot with our campus chapter program there that's new at Tuskegee University. And he also participates in the Birdability Affinity Group. So Joe, take it away.
Great, thanks everybody. I'm really excited to see what just 3 months ago was a grain of an idea come to life. It's Birdability Week, and birding really is for everybody. I'm going to drop the information into the chat box about contacting our panelists at the end of the presentation. And during the Q&A, we're going to try to answer as many questions and ask as many of your questions as we possibly can, but be sure to check audubon.org /birdability for more info. There's a lot of information there, and it's going to continue to grow. Check us out on social media, and you'll find a lot of questions that are answered there. So we're really looking forward to everything. I can't say enough about how we just couldn't have accomplished what we've done in these last 3 months without all the wonderful support from National Audubon and all the passion of all the panelists here and the folks that have made the Birdability Affinity Group happen. So thank you for that. I could go on and on, but I'm not. I'm going to now hand it over to Freya McGregor, who is part of our Birdability affinity group and who has been working tirelessly for the last 3 months to make this happen. So I'm gonna disappear for a little while and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks very much, Joe. Hi, everyone. I'm Freya McGregor.
Hi.
I'm really excited to be here tonight with you all, audience members and panelists. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from our panelists. Before we get started, I just want to make sure to mention that the panelists here tonight are a small sample of all the different birders who experience accessibility challenges. We don't claim to represent everybody. Every different person has a different story and a different set of experiences. And so this is just the start of the conversation. And we're looking forward to growing it as the Birdability movement continues to grow after this week. We also encourage you to talk with anyone you know who has accessibility challenges themselves and hear their story, because it may be similar to some of the stories you hear tonight and maybe completely different. So this, as I said, this is just the start of the conversation. I also want to acknowledge that there are certainly other barriers to accessing birding than disabilities. So barriers like racism and homophobia and limited access to financial resources. We're not going to talk much about that tonight, but I just want to acknowledge that we're well aware that there are also barriers to accessing birding, and Birdability certainly supports all the work that's being done to try and break down those barriers as well. We're also, I'm just going to define at the start, the use of the word disability. So we'll be using that word tonight. I'm just going to read my definition here. So we'll be using disability to include anyone who experiences who has a mobility challenge, a sensory impairment, to include birders who are deaf or hard of hearing and who are blind or have a vision impairment, intellectual or developmental disabilities, which includes autism, mental illnesses, and other health concerns that impact their ability to participate in birding as they would like. Finally, it's important to acknowledge that every human being is complex and you can't break bits of people apart from other bits of that same person. And so the birders who have a disability, that's one big barrier, but birders who have a disability and also maybe are Black, Indigenous and people of colour or identify as LGBTQIA+, will experience both sets of barriers at once. And that intersectional oppression will have an even bigger impact on their ability to go birding. So we at Birdability believe that Black Lives Matter, and we want to support BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ birders tell their stories too. So one final note, if anyone in the audience has a vision impairment, I will be verbalizing anything that would otherwise be visual information only, so you won't miss out on anything. And unfortunately, we did try to get closed captions and an interpreter for this event, but as Joe mentioned, this whole week got pulled together in 3 months by 3 volunteers with the support of National Audubon, and unfortunately we weren't able to, but stand by, we will do our best next time. So, with all that out of the way, let's meet our panel. Hi, panelists.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Freya.
So let's start. We're going to start with Virginia first, but let's start with your name and where you live at the moment. And then in 30 seconds or less, tell us how you go birding. So if you go birding by walking or you like birding in bird blinds. And yeah, 30 seconds. Virginia, you're up.
All right. I'm Virginia Rose. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I am living in Austin, Texas, I hope until my last day. It's a wonderful place to live. The way I bird is in a wheelchair. I've been in a wheelchair for 47 years, and I bird all over this country on every accessible trail I can get on, and I love it. Thanks, Freya.
That's awesome. Hey, Jerry, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you go birding?
Hi, my name is Jerry Barrier. I live in Malden, Massachusetts, which is near Boston. And I go birding. I'm a person who is blind, so I mostly go birding with other people when I can. Although the truth is, I do most of my birding right from where I'm sitting right now because I have microphones mounted on the back and front of my house, and I can hear them through my audio mixer into my computer, and I can even record things if I want to try to identify them later. Thank you.
That's awesome. Super cool, Jerry. Sarah, how do you go birding, and where do you live?
Yeah, thanks, Freya. I live in Newtown, Connecticut, and I too bird from a wheelchair. I have been in a wheelchair since 2008, and I do it however I can, whatever's available to me. Sometimes it's just from my car, although that's my least favorite. But I love going out to the trails, and my favorite is when I have a friend, but sometimes that's not possible. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Diane. Now, Diane is actually here representing two people at the same time, which is really cool. So Diane's intro might last a little longer. Diane, would you like to introduce yourself and Allison?
Sure. My name's Diane Allison, and I live in Upper Bucks County in Pennsylvania. It's just north of Philadelphia. And I like to bird anywhere, any way I can. I do car birding, sitting birding, any type that I can. And the other person that I want to introduce tonight is a best friend, Allison McCool, who suffered from multiple sclerosis, and we birded together for many years. She moved from cane to walker to wheelchair. And as she made that transition to full-time wheelchair use, she said to me one day, "I don't think I'm going to be able to bird with you anymore." And I said, "No, we can. We just have to do it differently." And so we pursued all kinds of ways to bird, like I said, sitting, driving, however we could do it. So the perspective that I will be bringing tonight is what she taught me through all those years of birding with someone who had accessibility challenges.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Diane. And just if anyone's confused, Diane's last name is Allison and her best friend's name is Allison. So that's just kind of fun. Who else have we got? Alexander. Alexander, where are you at and how do you bird?
Hello, I am Alexander DeBarros. I live in Burbank, California, which is a part of Los Angeles. I bird really just like Diane any way I can, whether it's walking, biking, car, just sitting. If I can bird, I will bird.
That's awesome. Super cool. And Melanie. So Melanie is another special category of panelists tonight. But Melanie, please introduce yourself and let us know how you bird.
I am Melanie Furr from Atlanta, Georgia. And I, like the others, like to bird wherever I am, however I can. But my favorite way to go birding is just to step out on my back porch with my morning cup of coffee.
That's super cool. So that's really an interesting collection of different ways that someone can go birding. And I would like a change in the broader birding community to define birding and a birder, because I think that a birder is someone who enjoys wild birds, not watching, listening. I listen to birds, but I'm sighted. You don't have to own binoculars, you don't have to walk, you don't have to go on field trips, you don't have to know what they're even called. If you enjoy them, you're a birder, and that's birding. And I think that using that sort of terminology can help include and welcome so many different people, especially new birders or potential future birders, which is everybody who's not already a birder. And I think that shift in language could be really powerful. So I would like to see that change in the wider birding community. So panelists, another 30-second answer, please. What got you into birding? How did it start? Let's start with Sarah.
Oh gosh. Well, when I was growing up, my mom was a birder and I thought it was the most boring thing that anybody ever invented. But after my spinal cord injury, I began to take a very strong interest in conservation and things like pollinator gardens. I'm a landscape designer, so I got involved with the pollinator group. And the more I learned about the connection between the pollinators and birds, and I just developed this really keen interest in birds. And so that's held on, and I'm just soaking it up as much as I can.
And so you came to birding really, like, apart from when you were not really excited as a kid, you really came to birding after your spinal cord injury, is that right?
Yes, I was always pretty interested, but I was so busy. I was working. I always had somewhere to be. And somehow the injury slowed me down, and I really was able to observe more. And it really has been kind of a blessing, I have to say.
Yeah. How's that, guys? That's really cool. Disability is not all negative. That's a really important message right there. Thank you, Sarah. That's really powerful. Alexander, what got you into birding?
So 10 years ago, I was a little further back. I've always been interested in science, and I had been learning a lot about whales, but I was starting to get bored with that because you can't really see 10 species of whales while walking to school. And then I went to a bookstore and I found a book on birds, actually this book on birds,
Nice.
and started flipping through it to some of the species.
What's the title, Alexander? Just so anyone who can't see can...
It's the National Geographic Field Guide to Birds of Western North America by John Dunn and Jonathan Alderfer.
Thank you.
But yeah, I started looking through this, and some of the birds look cool, and yeah, 10 years later, it's just who I am.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Kind of transitioning from whales to birds just by a good encounter in a bookstore. I love it. Jerry, what got you into birding?
Well, I was a psych major when I was in college, and I had to take one biology course, and my professor didn't know what to do with me during the lab portion of the course. So he gave me Cornell recordings to listen to and said, I want you to try to learn some of the bird sounds, and your grade will be based on a walk with me at the end of the semester where we're going to see how much you've learned. And at first, they all sounded alike to me, and I found it, I wasn't all that interested in it. But by the end of the semester, I was totally hooked, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's so cool. Jerry, how long ago were you in college?
That would have been around 1972.
Yeah, how's that?
I'm an old guy.
A veteran birder. I'd just like to point out, guys, that's an amazing story of how one person who started thinking out of the box and found a way to include Jerry where he could participate in an equivalent type of activity. Not only did it mean he could participate in his biology class, but it also gave him a lifelong passion. And that was one person who just took, I don't know, half an hour maybe to think outside the box and come up with that. And that's just such a powerful message right there. That's really, really cool. I love that story, Jerry. Melanie, what got you into birding?
I got into birding about 10 years ago when I started volunteering at a wildlife rehabilitation center. And the first area that I was trained in was the baby bird room, where I was feeding the baby birds, and you'd go down the row and get done with the row and then go start again. But I didn't know a lot about them. And so I got curious and I went on my first Audubon bird walk. And it was like someone took blinders off of me because I saw and heard birds that I did not even know existed before that spring day. And the rest is history. I've been hooked ever since.
And you're professionally hooked as well, I believe.
Yes. I work as the director of education for Georgia Audubon. And awesome. I still get to tie in my wildlife rehab work. I'm the caregiver for our non-flighted, non-releasable ruby-throated hummingbird ambassador. So
that's super cool. Thanks, Melanie. Virginia, what got you into birding?
I think I was just casting about for something else to do on a Friday night and heard on the radio, NPR, that there was going to be a birding program at a neighborhood church. So I decided, hey, that sounds like fun. And so I went, and that was it. I immediately joined Travis Audubon, took all their classes, went on all their field trips, and never looked back. And that was 17 years ago.
Awesome. Super cool. I love these chance encounters that just create such a awesome opportunity. Diane and Alison, how did you guys get into birding?
Well, we were both into it for quite some time. When we first knew each other, we weren't into it big, but we both loved nature. My father had been a birder, and like Sarah, I wasn't real interested because it was his interest. And then when I moved into my home, I had a Northern Harrier go by the window one day, and wow, what's that? And I had to figure it out. And then I had the opportunity to go on a Christmas count with a gentleman that was a top-notch birder in the county, and had me go with him because he never wanted to send a new birder with the groups that were already established. And he was amazing, an amazing mentor. And I just fell in love with birds, and I am just a total bird brain now. And that's all I like to do in my spare time. That's it. And
Awesome.
Allison, I guess I should mention to the folks too, that Allison passed away February a year ago. And so, the things that I say will be experiences that we had together. She just evolved as a birder. I mean, I was interested, and I started taking her along on bird outings, and just pulled her along, and she just blossomed into the whole thing, and she became a member of the flock, and then she was sold too. So then it became
awesome.
A passion for both of us.
Bring your friends to birding outings, guys. You never know what happens because of it. That's really cool. Okay. So I'm just watching the clock. I had a couple more introductory type questions to ask, but we might have to save them for a future event. But I just wanted to talk briefly about this word disability. I know in the birding community and in the wider community, there can be a lot of misunderstanding and confusion and awkwardness about certain words and whether they're appropriate to use or they're rude. The Birdability Affinity Group, we've put together a it's called a guidance document, language and communication tips. It's on our website, which is audubon.org/birdability. That's the website. Everything we know is there, except the things I'm still working on, which hopefully will be up tomorrow night. But that's a document that's just a good place to start. We're not claiming to know everything. Certainly we would welcome your feedback. If there's words in there, if there's words you would like us to define in there, please let us know. And we're certainly not trying to imply that these words apply to everybody, because like I said at the start, every single person is a different person. Everyone has different preferences. So it's just a starting point. So at least you have somewhere to kind of feel a little bit more comfortable when you begin these conversations. So I just want to ask Jerry first and then Virginia. Jerry, if someone said to you that you have a disability or that you are disabled, how do you feel about that word and as it applies to you?
Well, I use the word disability. I don't usually say I'm disabled because I've always thought of disabled as being like a car that's stuck in the middle of the road and won't go anywhere, where a disability maybe defines one aspect of me. It doesn't define who I am. So I'm okay with the word disability.
Sure. And I wonder if that sort of points to the whole person first language, where you say things like a person who uses a wheelchair.
Yes.
Rather than, I think wheelchair user is okay. Maybe that was a bad example, but you say the person who. You don't say, for example, we haven't got anyone on the panel, as far as I know, who has epilepsy, but usually people don't like being called epileptic. They would rather be called a person, or be described as a person who has epilepsy. They'd probably rather be called by their name in first place. But that person first thing is a really good way to start. Person who, so a person who has a disability, they also may have brown hair and also may have a cousin and 3 cats. So like Jerry said, that using it like that is one way of describing one part of them, but it's not defining them as an entire human being. Thanks, Jerry. Virginia, how do you feel about the word disability and when it's applied to you?
Thank you for that question. I do prefer not to use the word disabled, mainly because I think it focuses on what we cannot do. And I'm all about doing what I can do and recognizing what everybody else can do.
Sure, absolutely. But if someone said to you, oh, like, you know, I keep using this word disability in this panel, in general, is it okay? You would just prefer not to use it yourself? Is that right? Or
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are reasons to use the word disability, mainly because I think that's what people are accustomed to hearing. And so the familiarity of that word, I think, is important, particularly right now. But I think as time goes on and as we all become more knowledgeable, that word will be sent away and it'll be replaced by other, I think, more positive words.
Yeah, interesting. And then, so I'm actually an occupational therapist. So occupational therapy is a healthcare profession that aims to enable people to do the things that are important to them in their everyday life, like showering and dressing and birding, that they can't do, usually because of an illness, an injury, or a disability. And so, and the three ways that OTs, occupational therapists, usually do this are by modifying the task, teaching new skills to the person or the people around them, and by by modifying the institutional, physical, cultural, or social environment. So it's a pretty amazing job, guys. You should all be OTs. But it's really broad, as you can tell by that explanation. But this Birdability is just so up my alley. The whole point of Birdability is to start breaking down these barriers so that people can go birding. Like that's exactly what occupational therapy is. But the reason I say this is because as a healthcare professional, the language that I use is generally a bit more medical and kind of formal, and that's appropriate in that context, but maybe individual people kind of feel a bit weird about it. So it's just something to throw out there. Everyone has their own different opinions and different preferences. So I also want to throw out there this idea, just to get you thinking about the concept of perhaps it's not the person who has the disability, perhaps it is the environment that is disabling.
Absolutely.
Because if you can get around and do the things you want to do and there's no barriers, physical barriers in front of you, and like Virginia has, is wheeling around on all these accessible trails, the environment enables her to participate in birding and she does not feel disabled. But if she comes to a staircase that she can't navigate, well, now the environment is disabling. So it's just an interesting thing. We won't go into it any further than that, but I just wanted to throw that out there because it's an interesting reframing of the concept of disability. All right, so let's talk about some of the physical accessibility challenges you guys have experienced while trying to go birding. And we're defining accessibility challenges as what I said basically before in the OT definition: the difficulties someone experiences in interacting with or while using the physical or social environment when trying to engage in a meaningful activity, which is in this case birding. So quick questions, panelists. Hands up if you've ever had difficulty going birding due to inaccessible trails or facilities. So that was, how many of us are there? There's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that was everyone except Melanie and Alexander. Okay, so there was 5 of us. I can't count. 5 of us had our hands up there, 2 of us didn't. Okay, hands up if you've tried to find out accessibility information on a nature centre or state park or other birding locations website, but couldn't. That's everyone except Jerry. Okay. And hands up if you've ever been to a birding location but couldn't get to the birds because of parking or other physical obstacles or barriers. Okay, so that's everyone except Melanie and Jerry. That included Alexander and me. So there you go. Everyone's going to have different experiences. And something else to point out, if it wasn't clear already, is that birders with vision impairments like Jerry are going to have a whole lot of different experiences and barriers than birders who use wheelchairs. A lot of it might overlap, but a fair bit of it is quite different. So that's just something else to throw into the conversation. So
Could I chime in something there about
please.
that? There's also a large variety of people who are wheelchair users and their abilities as well. For instance, Allison had no upper body strength as well as not being able to stand. So therefore, she could not navigate some places that perhaps Virginia could. So there's differences even within that group.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Diane, for pointing that out. And Virginia, I know Virginia is super strong. She's been using a wheelchair for 47 years. That's a long time. You probably get some bad skills in that time. And she spends a lot of time outside going birding. So she's getting even stronger and developing her wheelchair skill even more. And as far as I know, Virginia doesn't have any other health concerns, because plenty of people have more than one medical condition or disability or Alexander's nodding really hard there. Hey, Alexander, do you want to share your story there just briefly?
Yeah. So I have autism and type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed with T1D when I was 5 years old, and my parents had suspected autism for a long time, but I wasn't formally diagnosed until I was 17.
Oh, wow.
But both of those affect a lot of my life, a lot of my schooling, and the way I go birding.
Yeah, okay. So Alexander, can you tell us a little bit about so T1D1, type 1 diabetes, right? How does your diabetes impact your ability to go birding, and how does your autism impact your ability to go birding?
So with my diabetes, the issue is that my pancreas no longer produces insulin, which is the hormone that allows you to digest, actually absorb your food. So I have to control all of that stuff manually.
Sorry, I think we just lost you there for a
monitor.
second. Alexander, sorry, it was sugar, right? Sugar, we just lost you. That's what you can't absorb?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me
thank
now?
you, sorry. Yes,
Okay.
we're good. Just that little moment. Yep, it's just a
Yeah.
key word.
But I need to regulate all of it manually. I've got a continuous blood glucose monitor, a Dexcom, but I always need to make sure that I have enough glucose, that my blood sugar is in a stable area, so that way I can make sure that I'll actually make it through all the bird walk. And the autism, that's more of a sensory issue. I experience light and sound much more intensely than a neurotypical person. So living in a city, that can be overstimulating at times. But when I'm out in the middle of nowhere, just listening for birds, the heightened senses can actually be an advantage.
Sure, that's really cool. Just delving in there a second more, Alexander, what I also just heard you say between the lines was that, again, your disability can be a positive with birding. Is that what you just said about autism and your heightened senses, sensory experiences?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. And the diabetes. So you said sometimes you have to be really careful about your blood sugar level when you're out on a trail. So what kind of like time frames are we talking about, or what would happen if you miscalculated and something went haywire? Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that?
If my blood sugar, there's a range where it normally should be, the target range. If it goes too high, then I get really lethargic. If it stays high for too long, and we're talking months or years here, I would need to be hospitalized. If my blood sugar goes too low, there's a more immediate danger, because if there's no sugar to power my cells, then if it gets too low, I can just pass out. Fortunately, that has never happened in the last 16 years, but it's always a possibility.
Sure. So you've got to be pretty conscious of that then in anything you're doing, right? How frequently do you have to kind of check up on your blood sugar level?
Sometimes I just feel it, the Dexcom does transmit directly to my phone, so I can just check my blood sugar anytime, and it's 85 right now, which is good.
Awesome. Yeah, okay. But that's a whole other thing you've got to keep in the back of your head on a bird outing or anything. Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing, Alexander. That's really interesting. And it sounds like, although it might be easy to think that autism maybe impacts your ability to go birding more, it sounds like, in fact, diabetes is the bigger potential impact. Is that right?
Yeah, the diabetes, that's more of the lingering storm cloud.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Wow. Thank you. I've forgotten quite where I was before. That was really interesting. So thank you, Alexander. So,
Thanks.
oh no, I know where I am. Okay. So everybody, panelists, we just heard a really great story from Alexander. I'd love to hear a story in, I don't know, 90 seconds, if you can manage to time that, from each of you about one of the physical challenges that you have experienced when trying to go birding. I don't know if maybe that was this one time when you went to this great trail and there was a tree down halfway and you couldn't get past the tree, that kind of a story. So I want to hear about the physical accessibility challenge you came across, and I want to hear about what you did next, whether you turned around and went home or you could problem solve your way out of it. Diane, have you got a story to share in that area?
Yeah. We were birding in Bosque del Apache Refuge in New Mexico, Allison and I, and there were some surfaces that were difficult. I spotted a kite, and it's not a bird that should be there really. So I tried to get her on it. And one of the main difficulties that we often have when we were car birding and all is perspective. And I guess that's something I'd like to just spend a second on, perspective. We have to remember as bird leaders, if we're leading an outing or whatever, to take the person's perspective. And Allison sometimes forcefully taught me about perspective, because I would point to a bird, try to show it to her, but since she couldn't move very well and she obviously couldn't get out of the vehicle and look or whatever, if I didn't have the vehicle pointed quite correctly, then she was seeing a different spot than I was. And the same thing could be said for if I'm birding with Virginia and I say, there's a scarlet tanager in that tree and it's at 3 o'clock and it's, and I don't see it. And so you need to go to the person and take their perspective, see it through their eyes, get down on your knee and look at the same spot that Virginia's seeing. At 6'1", I'm seeing a different thing than Virginia is. And so I need to get down into her spot, see her perspective and help her see that bird. There's nothing more frustrating for birders with disabilities or new birders in general, when they go on an outing and they don't see most of what is being seen because someone hasn't helped them find the bird and take their perspective. So that particular incident where it was difficult to get to it, we did overcome it. I just quickly got out and got the wheelchair and got her in it and got her out of the vehicle so that she could get a different perspective. And so I would say that that's something we all need to take into consideration.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. That's really powerful. I'll just take a moment there to talk about pointing things out when you're working or birding with someone who has a vision impairment. I'm going to call on you, Jerry. If someone says, hey, do you see that bird over there, and points, is that very helpful for you?
No, and it happens quite often, especially with close family members, because they just forget sometimes. But yeah,
sure. But what about, okay, and then a slight deviation. What about when someone says to you, see you later? Is that because you will not literally see them ever? Is that
right.
Is that offensive if someone uses words like see to you?
No, not in the least. That's perfectly acceptable language. I say it all the time, even to my blind friends. Well, it's just a common way of saying I will I will interact with you later. People say, I'll see you later. And it's very acceptable.
Sure, and it's not weird. And if someone was like, "Hey, see you later," would that just makes it weird, right? Like for both of you.
Yes.
Yeah. So see you later is fine, but
Yes.
see that bird over there, point is not very helpful.
Not helpful, but not particularly offensive either.
Sure.
But yeah.
How would you prefer someone to help you get your ears on a bird if they're out birding with you? What kind of words and direction would be helpful for you?
I have to say that as I've gotten older, I've developed some high frequency hearing loss, and my wife, who never had any interest in birds until we started hanging around together a few years ago, will now say, "What is that?" And I'll say, "What is what?" I'm tempted to say, "Oh, it's just a sparrow. Don't worry about it." But sometimes she'll say it,
okay.
and I don't even hear anything.
But that, I guess, so high frequency hearing loss is a normal part of aging, and my understanding is that it happens to men usually a little bit earlier than women. So what you just described is like totally normal.
Yeah, it's true.
And I wonder, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I wonder if I have a really good friend who has albinism, and he has low vision, vision impairment as a result of that. And he got himself, he's older than me. He's actually an occupational therapist as well. And he got himself some hearing aids a couple of years ago. And he said it blew his mind. He didn't realize how much he was missing because he didn't necessarily see that he was missing it.
Yes.
But when he could hear all this stuff, and he said to me one day, he said, "Freya, do you think I could go birding now that I can hear the birds better?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes. So that's really cool. And I just like to do my part here to normalize hearing aids, because like any kind of assistive device, if using it means that you can do the thing that you want to do, please do that, because you want to do the thing that you want to do. And please don't be embarrassed or ashamed. I know everyone's got different experiences, but just trying to be encouraging. Melanie's got something to add in there.
Yeah, if I could just interject, they actually make a device, I don't know that much about it, for birders that lowers the frequency. So you're still hearing the birds that other people are hearing, but the frequency is lowered so that if you have that high frequency hearing loss, you hear the birds. So
well, let me set the record straight. I actually got hearing aids a few years ago, and that was the exact reason I got them, because I wanted them. But I discovered that they also had negative effects on me as a congenitally blind person. They affected my ability to gauge how far I was away from things when I was inside buildings. And it really, I'm still not completely used to using them. And I admit I don't wear them all the time, because I'm kind of on the edge of hearing loss, where for the most part, it causes no problem for me. It's only when I go out birding or when there's a very light sound that other people may hear. But yeah, I do have hearing aids, and I expect eventually I'll probably have to get better ones.
Sure. Thanks, Jerry.
Someone just popped up in the chat. They said it's called Song Finder. And it's not a hearing aid.
Yes.
Just a device for birders.
Yeah.
Thanks, Melanie. Jerry, I had something else to add there. Oh, yes. In occupational therapy, we talk about functional limitations. Mm-hmm. So just because someone has, I don't know, what's an example? They've been diagnosed. Oh, that's a bad example. They've got some diagnosis, some formal diagnosis, but ultimately at this point, there's no impact on them, on the things that they want to do.
Yes.
Then there's no functional limitation. But when that, whatever that is, that diagnosis, that disability becomes impacting, starts to impact their ability to do stuff, that's now a functional limitation. And we use that terminology in occupational therapy. And I just thought that was interesting, because what you just said, Jerry, sounded like your hearing loss is not really having a functional impact on you. But in fact, the way you know where you are in space as a totally blind person using hearing aids has a negative functional impact on you. So that's kind of really interesting, interesting to learn. All right. Physical accessibility challenges. We're still going on that. Sarah, have you got a story about a time you went birding and you found yourself with a something in the built environment that stopped you?
Yeah, it was pretty close to the time when I took up birding quite seriously. So I was very excited to hear about all the rare bird alerts in the area, and I followed them avidly. And people kept talking about these boat-tailed grackles that were at a certain pond about 45, 50 minutes drive away. And so I got a friend to go down there with me, and we went to the, we didn't know much about the, how accessible the pond was, but we got up there, there was a blind. She had to definitely help me on the path. The path wasn't great, and we got to the blind, and she looks out an opening and spots a boat-tailed grackle, and there I am. I'm like, I can't reach the ones that are up there, and the ones that are down there are for 3-year-olds, and I couldn't, my view was completely blocked. So we kind of laughed about it, turned around, and we went somewhere else on the property and had a very nice outing. But when I got home, I looked up the website for the wildlife refuge, and I emailed them, and I told them what happened. And they were so responsive, and they asked me what I needed. They came down with a crew. They put the openings at wheelchair height, and they improved the path, and they improved the parking all in one fell.
Wow.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So sometimes it works out.
Yeah, that's a really cool story, Sarah. Thank you. And that's another, there's so many powerful things coming out. I'm going to overuse that word, I think, if I haven't already, but a powerful message on the power of one person to make a difference, and also the power of advocating for your needs, because sometimes people don't know that they're doing a thing that's not helpful until you tell them. And most humans are kind most of the time, I think. And so if you let them know, like, hey, that's not cool, or hey guys, your blind sucks, in nicer words, probably a good idea. But most people will be, I would think, would be pretty responsive to that. So I'm really glad that you got on the phone or email and told them about your experience, and they fixed it. That's really cool. Did you ever end up seeing the boat-tailed grackles there?
Yes, it was great. Yes.
Good.
And I just want to say, when I reached out to them, I tried to keep the level of criticism down. It was just, this is what happened, and it would be so great if you guys could add a couple of openings to that blind. And so when they did all that, I was very, very grateful.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes it helps to not be too negative in the way you.
No, sure. Sorry,
better things happen.
Brutal summary there from me. So that might be the opportunity for me to mention. So on our website, again, that's audubon.org/birdability. We have everything up there that we know about. The big thing that's on that website is the Birdability map, which, if you don't know about it already, anyone can contribute a Birdability review. There's a little button, and you do like a little quick kind of checkbox survey. Maybe it takes 5 or 10 minutes, about the accessibility of a birding site that you've been to. Don't base it on something you saw online about the information someone had on their website. You have to go to the birding site, please. But anyone can go and do these Birdability reviews, and it's instant gratification because a pin immediately pops up on our Birdability map, and anyone can scroll around and check out any accessible birding sites near them and read the features of that, because lots of places on their website will say it's accessible, but there's a really big difference between something being accessible and something actually being accessible. And like I said before, everyone's requirements are going to be different. So having all that detailed information means that people can make their own decisions about whether they want to tackle that location or not. So please, especially this week, because it's Birdability Week, please go and do a Birdability review of a place near you and help us grow that map so that everyone can find out about places near them. Quick shout out, if you're wondering about my accent, I'm actually Australian, but I've been living in the US for the last nearly 5 years after falling in love with a handsome American. And the map right now, when you go online, the map is set to show America, or to North America by default, but you can toggle that around. And Birdability, this isn't US specific. This is planet-wide, worldwide. So if you're watching this from Australia, if you're watching this from anywhere, please go on there and add Birdability reviews. If we get a couple more pins in places that aren't just North America, we might set it so that I hope we'll set it so that the whole world will be visible there. So it's immediately apparent that this is a worldwide conversation. This is not a US or a North America specific conversation. While I'm on the website, there's also a link to the Birdability Birded survey, and that's something that we created for this week. It will be available until the 15th of November in case you're able to send it to your bird club, and they can push it in their newsletter, for example, and it'll take that amount of time for people to get to be able to do the survey and send it back in. But there's a survey up there asking about your experiences birding and the accessibility challenges you've faced, because the Birdability Affinity Group, National Audubon's Birdability Affinity Group, we want to, and Birdability in general wants to know this information so we know where to tackle these barriers first. I know there's lots of work to be done. There's heaps here, but we really want to hear your experiences. So please do that. The link is on the website. And the other thing that's on the website, this was actually the reason I was mentioning this, is that Virginia and I are working really hard to finalize some Birdability guidance documents. Hopefully they'll be up there by tomorrow. We're nearly there. But we've got the one up there already is that language and communication use. We're also going to have one up there access considerations for Birdability reviews and determining if a birding location is a good spot to lead an accessible bird walk. We're also going to have one up there about steps to implement Birdability locally. And we're also going to have one, this is why I thought of it, because of what Sarah said, a bit of a template so that you can just kind of copy it and paste it into your email or whatever to send to your city council or to the wildlife refuge or to whoever it is to say, hey, I visited, that wasn't really that great. Do you think maybe you could kind of fix that? It'd be really helpful. And while you're at it, you might as well refer them to our website. We'll have that in the template too, because maybe the information on our website might help them when they decide like what the best thing to do is. So yeah, check that out. It was a big plug, but we're really proud of our website. And also huge shout out to National Audubon's GIS consultants, Ryan, Liz, and Abigail, because they've been absolute superstars in making that website what it is at this moment. So yeah, big really mad probs to those guys.
That's great.
Wow, that was a huge tangent. Okay, physical accessibility challenges. Virginia, have you got a story about one that you ran into and what you did at that time?
Oh my gosh, do I have stories? Birding for 17 years in a wheelchair. If I am birding by myself, I generally try to figure out whatever it is. So many times it's mud. It'll be a real muddy, grassy event. I might be wheeling along and realizing that I'm just collecting more and more and more mud on every single wheel. Like so much so that every handful is a handful of mud as I'm wheeling. And at that point, I usually turn around, abandon that idea and try to get back to my car limping along. But there are times where I'll encounter a big set of steps. And when I am with people, generally, I'm a very small person, so generally someone just grabs me and someone else grabs the chair and off we go. And
Like they pick you up. They pick you up.
Yeah. They just pick me up, and off we go. And so that's really sort of a normal way of moving around for me. But sometimes we encounter big logs across the trail. I know I had a wonderful experience in East Texas, and we were after the Swainson's warbler, and as we were heading up the trail, we encountered a big fallen tree across the trail. And so the two field trip leaders, one of them picked up the front of the chair, the other picked up the back of the chair. They raised me up, chair and all, and I asked someone for music, please, and then over the log we went and back down and on we went to get to the Swainsons.
That's
So
really cool.
It's really just a question of figuring things out as you go. And I have to say that it is one of the things I love doing, is being on a trail and encountering a challenge and not knowing how to manage it on my own, but figuring it out.
Yeah, cool.
To me, that's one of the joys, the figuring something out and being able to continue along my way, whatever it might be.
It's really empowering, right? When you can problem solve something for yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I did that and I did it by myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Super cool. So that actually segues really well. We're going to shift gears, everyone. I'm just going to ask Virginia again about being picked up, chair and all, or bodily and chair separately. Would you recommend that if someone was on a bird outing with someone else in a wheelchair and they came to some steps and the person in the wheelchair was like, oh, I guess I can't do the steps, would you recommend that the able-bodied person just picked that person up?
Well, I guess
I'll give you some more context. If they've never talked to each other before, they don't know each other from a bar of soap.
Right.
Is that generally an okay thing to do?
Probably
just touch
not.
Someone else's wheelchair?
Well, I would say if the person knows you well, then it's probably understood that you're about to get picked up and taken up the stairs. But if you don't know the person, then probably the first thing for the leader to ask is, do you want to go up? Because a lot of times a person in a wheelchair may really be uncomfortable with the idea of someone picking them up and taking them up. So the first question to ask is, do you want to go up? And the second question is, how can we best do that?
And let the person in the wheelchair direct. Yeah, cool, great. And in general, my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, but in general, my understanding is people should not touch someone else's mobility device or other assistive device unless given permission. That includes wheelchairs, that includes walking frames, that includes long canes. Like Jerry, I don't know if you must be a long cane user, right?
I am, yes.
So if someone it would not be okay, right? If someone just moved your long cane.
I would have to whack them with it.
Yeah, watch out. That's how you know where to go, right? That's how you find out where to move. And so people, don't touch someone else's long cane.
Yes, I've actually had people grab the tip of my cane and try and touch something with it, thinking that I can somehow sense from the other end of the cane what that is. It doesn't work so well.
Oh my gosh. Freya, I would add that it happens.
Sorry. Please go ahead, Virginia.
I would like to add that actually frequently it happens that when people are close to me, they may be kneeling down to see what I can see. And I wanted to speak quickly to what Diane was saying when she was trying to make sure that she was giving Allison the right perspective. That very frequently it works just the opposite. So my eye line is 3 feet, and frequently I see birds that other people aren't seeing. And so I have to realize that they are up at a 6 foot vision line, and then we figured out from there. But the point is that a lot of times when people are down trying to see the bird that I am seeing, they very frequently use my wheelchair to get back up. And they always have, that's been something that has always happened. And so it may again be that these are just people with whom I'm very familiar, but not always. And I always, I'm always happy to lend a hand to anybody trying to get up, especially with grumpy knees.
Yeah, and I would add too, I mean, I know Allison had experiences with people, she had a power wheelchair, and you can get in some real dangerous situations if somebody leans on the power stick,
Oh boy.
And you're not expecting it. And I know she had some, sometimes that happened. So yeah, you just can't be putting your hands on equipment, especially when you don't know what it does.
Right.
Unless you ask, is it okay? And that person says yes. Because you could also ask, do you need help going through that door, for example? And the person says no. Then trust them. Don't force your help. That's never appreciated from anybody ever. Don't force the help. If they want it, they'll tell you. If they don't, then there might be a really good reason why they don't want your help, because they've probably, for example, with a door and a wheelchair, they've probably gone through millions of doors independently because there's been no one to hold the door open. And they've probably got a whole system. And if you hold the door open, you actually might make it harder for them. So if someone says no, just politely and graciously accept that and just stand by for if they want your help later. Don't take offense. Just be respectful of their
even as close as we were, I would always ask, do you want to do it yourself? Do you need help? Tell me what you need from me. Because it takes away her power if I step in and always think I can fix it. And so, I think you need to be sensitive to that and not assume that someone can't do it, because they very well might be able to, and you stepping in is taking away their ability.
Right.
I also think it's important to do it very graciously, because you want to encourage people to interact with you. Mm-hmm. And so what I always make a point of doing is saying, when they ask, can I help you? I always say, I think I've got it, but I do make a point. I really appreciate you asking. And just, reaffirming that that's a good gesture is important.
That is a great point.
Could I ask Sarah and Virginia, I know one of the things that kind of disturbed Allison, and see if you've had this experience too, that you go into a visitor center and you're going to ask some questions or whatever, and she and I would be there together, and she would often come out and say, did you see that? People were talking to you and not to me. In other words, they're like just ignoring the fact that she's even there when she's sitting right in front of me and talking to me. So I wondered what if maybe you could share a little bit of your feelings if that's happened to you.
Yeah, it's happened to me a few times. And I think that people they just feel uncomfortable in the face of somebody in a wheelchair or with whatever disability we're talking about. And it's very dehumanizing. And I've had the experience where I will ask the question and the person behind the counter will address the answer to whoever is standing next to me.
Right.
And it's like I don't even exist.
Well, that really blows my theory, because I always thought it was only people who are blind that experienced that. And I thought it was because I couldn't make eye contact with people, but I guess that's not it at all.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that, Sarah and Diane. And I really have to practice this. My first response would be, hello, I'm the person asking the question, but I can't do that because that's alienating. So instead, I will say something like, oh, excuse me, I'm going to be the decision maker here. But I say it in a really nice way, like, okay, but I'm the decision maker. So what is it again?
That reminds me of a time
we could go out together, Virginia. I'd have so much fun with you.
It reminds me of a time when my wife and I were in a restaurant and the lady took her order and then she said, "And what would he like?" And my wife paused and said, "I have no idea." And then the lady she got it, and then she responded to me directly.
God.
Yeah,
Good
so,
one, Jerry.
I've just been
There's-
told. I've
There's
just
a
been
few
told that-
times that's happened to me actually, because sometimes when I'm birding with my friends, most of my birding friends are white, and I'm obviously black. But sometimes we're out and a non-birder will ask my friend a question, and sometimes I'll answer it, and then the person would sometimes keep talking to my friend and just not really acknowledge me.
Mm.
It's terrible.
So what I understand is that and the way I've been trained to go about it is to assume that the person you wish to know the answer from can answer you. Ask them directly, like as if they're another human being, because they are. And if it happens that they have some kind of communication disability, or they have an intellectual disability, and they can't answer you, or they can't answer you in a way that you understand, if they're with someone, that other person will probably take over. But start by asking the person first, and let that, don't you make that decision about whether they can understand or whether they can respond. Let that come about, because I don't want, like, if someone asked my husband what do I want for dinner, you better believe I'd be like, excuse me, as if you don't, and he might get it right. I mean, he knows me pretty well, but that's not the point. That's not the point. And so, yeah, we're all human beings. So please treat us all with respect. Thanks, guys. You totally blitzed my second
Sorry.
change of gear. No, you did it all just beautifully, which was going to be about how the social and cultural environment, as in other people, other birders, can impact your ability to go birding by being inappropriate or weird or otherwise not inclusive and unwelcoming when you're out birding. And I think that's really important for the able-bodied, the sighted, and the neurotypical birders out there to know that being intentionally inclusive, it's not enough to just assume that people will know they're welcome. You have to make it really, you have to be intentional about that. You have to make it really clear that people are welcome. And that's on us to do. That's not on the person to create somehow. That's on the sighted, the able-bodied, and the neurotypical birders to do. I should caveat that slightly with, I say us, I have what I hope is a temporary disability. I hope. It's looking less and less likely. I have a dodgy knee, and I say dodgy, which is very unmedical because it's been 18 months now and no medical specialist has been able to tell me what is causing it. But last summer, suddenly I was unable to straighten it, like overnight. And that really impacted my ability to walk, which meant I couldn't go birding the way I wanted to because I couldn't walk on the trails. And it's loads better now, but it's not back to normal, whatever that is. And the last information I had 2 weeks ago was that it is not lupus, which is great news, but it may be degenerative joint disease, which is better than lupus, but still not awesome. But there you go. We'll figure it out. I'm still learning how to manage it best. I think that's something that I'll get better at it over time. Hopefully it doesn't get much worse. Anyway, so I'm sort of half in the birders with disabilities category and half out of it because I'm sort of newly in that category. And anyway, it doesn't really matter. Also, putting people in boxes doesn't always help. So I'll just forget about that. Before we get to the Q&A, I know Joe is going to have a whole lot of questions from you guys to shoot at us, which I'm really excited to hear. But before we do, I particularly want to ask Melanie to share a bit of her experiences. So Melanie, can you tell us a bit about your work at George Audubon with the Shepherd Centre and what you've done in partnership, in collaboration with them, and why you did it the way you did it?
Yes, thanks for asking. I have been collaborating with the Shepherd Spinal Center in Atlanta for the past 4 years, and I lead monthly outings for inpatients, as well as an annual spring retreat and fall clinic to introduce people to birding and get them outside and put binoculars in their hands. A lot of these people are newly injured or struggling with new health concerns. So for a lot of the people that I work with, this birding outing out on the Beltline, which is just around the corner from the hospital, is their first time out of the hospital. So I try to focus on all the senses, remembering that not everyone can hold a pair of binoculars. You know, there's so many different ways to engage in birding. And having worked through the Shepherd Center, I just realized too how unfriendly the world is to people with mobility challenges. Just not enough curb cuts, not enough parking, accessible restrooms. So my biggest challenge in running these programs is just finding accessible locations to bring people.
Sure. So that birdability map, so people contributing birdability reviews to the birdability map would really help you?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. But there's so much potential for wellness for all of us to go outside and go birding. And it's something that anybody can do no matter where they are, even when they're in a hospital. So
absolutely. This occupational therapist, I'm all about the benefits of nature therapy. For everybody, there's so much research that documents stuff that we probably should have already known, but anytime you can spend in nature, even if there's scientific evidence that says 10 minutes sitting on a bench in a garden has benefits to your attentional capacity, which I won't go into that further. I'm just putting it out there. It's huge. Nature is good. Go outside, people. Go outside. Looking at a window also, and even looking at photos, there's been documented evidence that can have positive impacts on your health and well-being. So that's pretty amazing. So that's really cool, Melanie. I am so all about your work with the Shepherd Spinal Center. And just really quickly, because we're nearly out of time, how did you partner with them? Did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you, or how did that happen so that other people can maybe do the same thing with their local rehab hospital?
Their horticulture therapist reached out to me initially, and we had a sit-down face-to-face meeting and created a plan to start offering birding-related activities to her patients. I've since reached out and connected with the recreational therapy department at Shepherd. But there's so much potential. I haven't even been able to scrape the surface. We have a veterans hospital in Atlanta, senior communities. So I would just like to encourage people that are field trip leaders or nature centers or Audubon chapters, reach out to some of these community groups and see how you can collaborate, because there's a need and, certainly just a desire to spread good in the world.
Yes, yes. All it takes is you reaching out and being intentionally inclusive, right? That's really, really cool. That just makes me really happy.
Can I just add, birding is so therapeutic. I mean, I just know MS is a really bad disease that takes away so much from you. And I know that birding brought Allison such joy, and the time that she would spend doing it was just so uplifting and empowering, because you see what you can do and you see the beauty of the birds. And even if you just sit there and absorb that for a half an hour on one bird, that brought a lot to her. So I can vouch for the therapeutic nature of birding.
Thank you,
When
Diane.
When I am focusing on a bird and really trying to find that bird and then really trying to identify it, I completely forget about my back pain and all my health problems. It transports me out of my disability.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. Thanks very much. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Sarah, for adding all that. That's really, really cool. And here comes Joe, because he's desperate to ask us questions that the audience has sent in. So without further ado, thank you, everyone. Joe, what have you got for us?
Wow. I'm excited, y'all. This is great stuff. Please forgive the y'alls. I'm from Alabama, can't help it. There have been questions all across the board, everything from very specific questions to very big picture questions. I'm going to start out with, and people are still asking questions, which is going to confuse me, but that's okay. I'm going to start out with a question that anybody and everybody can answer if they want to, and it's a big picture question. What one thing would make birding a better experience for you? And I'm going to throw it to Virginia. And if you'll, when you finish answering your question, just anybody else that wants to chime on in.
I would say that the thing that will make birding better for me is that I am able to get on a trail and wheel for hours. Send it to Sarah.
Well, I have basically the same answer, except I'd be really happy if I could just, if there were like 5 places I knew I could drive to within 1 hour from my house and be assured that I could park safely, get to the trail and be on there, even just for 1 hour, I'd be happy. But there's so many ifs in all of those conditions. Yeah.
Send it to somebody, Sarah.
Oh, Jerry.
That's
Okay, if I could go to a birding club and people would help me to introduce myself to them and begin to get to know me and offer an arm so I could go birding with them, I would be the happiest guy in the world.
Love it.
Can I just jump in there really quick? Offer an arm. So as a sighted guide to help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's so much more to talk about birders with vision impairments. That's a conversation that I'm really excited to have at some future point. So we stay tuned, everybody, for more from Jerry. Joe, is there anything else?
Yeah. Oh boy, there's so many more things. On a different scale, I guess we talked about the one thing that would make everything great. Is there one major barrier to birding or access to nature in general for you that people who are interested in improving the natural area accessibility should focus on? And I'll throw it to you, Melanie, if you want to just have a shot at that.
Where to begin? There's so much work we can do, but I would just say all of us put on that lens of experiencing the world from different perspectives, whether it's Virginia's 3-foot wheelchair level or, whatever else that may be, Jerry with his vision impairment, but just put on the lens and notice things as you're going through your day about what are those obstacles, because identifying them is the first step to breaking them down.
And we've also, I'll just add in quickly another plug for the Birdability map. Sarah said before that one of her big things was if she knew of 5 trails or 5 locations she could get to. So everybody, if you can fill out a Birdability review and help populate that map, I know I've heard from a lot of other birders too that would be absolutely the most valuable resource to get them outside, knowing with some level of certainty whether it's worth making the trip to that spot and what spots are around that they might be able to navigate. So that we can all contribute to that. You can all be, well, you're already all part of the Birdability movement because you tuned in tonight. So welcome. We're glad to have you on board. Please keep being part of it and help us by completing some Birdability reviews of places near you. Joe.
A nice question, I think, that comes really at a challenging time because of COVID, because we're not really doing any outings. But what about an outing description do you find useful particularly, and how does it help Audubon chapters and other bird clubs? How can they help you feel more able to get out and go birding? And I'm going to just toss somebody. Great.
I'll start us off because I am a regular walk leader. I should have mentioned this at the start, but I lead kids bird walks for San Fernando Audubon, and I lead bird walks for the Audubon Center at Debs Park and the city of Glendale most months. But think an important thing to consider when leading a bird walk is automatically assume that everybody has a different experience, everybody has a different way of doing things. And I think it would be a good thing for all walk leaders, myself included, to start off the walk by checking for mobility and sensory issues. Check and see, okay, do I need to adjust the walk for anybody, or should we just go full speed ahead?
Thank you, whoever asked that question too, because I now have a new idea for a guidance document for the Birdability website. Thank you for giving me more work. It's awesome. So we will get that up there as soon as we can. Again, we're trying hard to get stuff up tomorrow, before tomorrow. Quick plug, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, same place, Facebook Live, and you can register for the Zoom webinar. Virginia Rose, founder of Birdability, the lady that began it all, is going to be presenting on access considerations. So it's going to be a bit more like a lecture kind of presentation, and more sort of technical information about how you find accessible bird sites and what accessible bird sites are not. She's got some great photos definitely tune in there too, because there's going to be a lot of information there. And again, it will be recorded and posted on our website and everywhere else we can, so that you can tune in after the fact as well. So sorry, Joe, back to you.
Oh, that's okay. This is a really, I think, an interesting question, and we've got some people that are great birders and have been doing this for a long time. Have any of you done any ability hacks to make your birding easier? In other words, do you use any adopted equipment? I'm a quad and can't hold the binoculars and adjust the focus at the same time.
A quad being a quadriplegic, so 4 limbs, a spinal cord injury that affects all 4 limbs. Not necessarily completely unable to use arms and hands, but some part of that is affected. That's a whole nother story. But just so that everyone knows what a quad is. Yeah, adaptive equipment for birding. That's a really cool question.
I don't know if you'd call it adaptive equipment for birding, but I always be sure to have a scope that I can, that for instance, if Allison and I were birding, that I could set up for her. She couldn't always, as this questioner asked, couldn't always hold up binoculars, especially for any length of time. And so if I could set the scope up for her so that she could continue to look through that for longer periods of time. So I don't know that you'd call that adaptive equipment, but it's something that did allow her to enjoy the birds, which she wouldn't have been able to do it without.
Freya,
can I just chime in really quickly?
Freya, I need to speak to this.
Oh, please.
I have a scope. Precision Camera helped me to put an armed adapted I don't know how to describe it, on my wheelchair. And so it clamps onto my wheelchair and I can wheel around with it, and the scope is right here. All I have to do is put my eye down on it. And so in fact, I think it was National Audubon found out about that scope, contacted me and said, give us all the information. We're going to buy a scope in our office. And then whenever a person in a wheelchair comes, we can just slap that scope right there on their chair.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And awesome work, Minnesota Audubon. Hey, every other Audubon chapter and nature center. You've just got a really good idea right there. Oh, quick note on that too. The first most important thing is to have accessible features at your nature centers and trails. The second most important thing is to have, I don't know, this is my theory. The second most important thing is to have your staff and volunteers trained in what those features are, because if no one knows about that amazing scope out in the back room because no one's asked to use it for a couple of months, it doesn't help anybody. So staff and volunteers need to be trained in this stuff, and preferably also trained in some kind of disability awareness communication stuff so they don't make things awkward. Again, start with that document on our website if you've got nowhere else to turn to, but that's really cool. And another note on scope, another wheelchair user gave me a really good suggestion, which is if you're holding a bird outing and you're going to be like parked at like a lake for a while, have a scope set up so that walking people can use it, and have a scope set up at the right height, just set up from the start so that a wheelchair user can get up to it. Because if they have to ask you to put it down, they might not want to do that, and you're not being intentionally welcoming and inclusive. So if you just have it set up from the beginning, you're like, that's really cool as well. So I know that's not quite the answer to the question that was asked, but I just wanted to add that in there too, because I think that's important.
Can I real quick say, please go to my blog, and there is a post called The Scope. And in it is where I describe the scope and how very, very important it is for people who are in wheelchairs to be able to participate in the scope line.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I'm watching the clock. I know we've officially got 1 more minute left. I just want you to know that I wrote these things down. I have this list that keeps growing, even though I've been working hours and hours on Birdability Week for the last 2 weeks. It keeps growing and growing because there's so much more to do, and there's it's just really exciting. The conversations that are happening and the awareness that's being raised, and I'm so excited to be part of it. The scope, Virginia, we might try and get that on the big website too, just so everyone gets to it. I think that's going to be really valuable technical information to share. And any other questions, I'm going to get hold of the questions that you all ask via Facebook and via Zoom. Shout out to my own personal Instagram. It's at the OT Birder, OT for occupational therapist. I'm doing a lot of posting this week particularly, but it will continue about Birdability Week and all this stuff. So any questions that I'll try and see if I can answer, and I'll try and like field answers from these guys as well, as that might be the best for now, the best way to try and answer questions that we didn't get to. I'm sure there were lots more. This conversation isn't going to stop here. Like I said, National Audubon have been incredible in their support with putting together Birdability Week, and they've told me already that they're really interested in supporting us host more of these conversations going forward. So that's really, really exciting. So stay tuned, follow me on Instagram, check out our website. That's where all this information is going to be. If you want to get in touch with one of the panelists tonight, please email Birdability for everybody. That body part is really important because different bodies, right? Everybody. Birdability for everybody @gmail.com. That's the email address that we just set up this week. That's kind of the one-stop Birdability contact place, and I will pass anything that comes in there on to the right people. That's just the easiest way to do it. Birdability for everybody @gmail.com and audubon.org/birdability and at the OT Birder on Instagram. I think that's about all we've got time for. Quick thank you to Joe for monitoring the questions, and Devon and Christine all behind the scenes, and Heather and Elaine and Bob all behind the scenes making this happen right now. And major thanks to everyone else at National Audubon who supported Birdability. Oh, and also Taiki James, who gave me some really invaluable guidance in moderating a panel. This is the first time I've done this, so really grateful for his mentoring in this. And yeah, we look forward to meeting you all out on the trail. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. It's been a lot of fun.
Bye.